Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Paddle Pod, your weekly podcast covering professional paddle presented by Hugo and Gons. We're on to episode 91, and as always, joined by my co-host Hugo here today. Hugo, it's great to have you on. How are you doing?
I'm doing especially well, Gons, as you very much know, because for all our followers and listeners and fans, probably not that many fans, but a few listeners, we can say. Yeah, we just got off the paddle court, played quite a good match against a good friend of mine from my tennis club, who's a great paddle player, and it's the first time we managed to beat him. So both Gons and I are pretty pumped. I mean, he was slightly injured, so whether that affected his play or not, I guess maybe a little bit, but hey, we got to take the win.
We do, and to be fair, even himself, he did say that in the second and third set he didn't feel it. And for context, in the second set, he gave us a 6-0 whopping. So I don't think he was feeling the injury that much there and then. So, at the end of the day, you kind of have to you have to take it, right? And if he's the one that wants to play and continue, then you got to be, you just can't let that in a way drag you down, if you see what I mean. Because sometimes, when you're playing or even during matches, a player gets injured or something, and then you start feeling a bit sorry for them, and you kind of play at your own, you just play below your level because you just don't want to be too harsh. And at the end of the day, if the player decided to stay, then, you just got to focus on your own business.
And actually, we've got a great case study in the final of the World Cup not that long ago
Right.
with,
Yeah, exactly.
Irish Watergate limping around, and they didn't decide to play enough of the balls to him, which they clearly should have done. I mean, this is Paquito Yanguas, as probably most of you know. Libaak turned into God mode, but
Mm.
it was that and also the wrong strategy. I mean, you've got a guy limping around the court. What are you doing? Not making him run as much as possible.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I remember we were quite adamant about it, and we were when we did that pod, we were like, "What the hell? Why didn't just throw every single ball to our Woodland?" So yeah, you're right on the money, I think.
And I honestly think this is that match will probably be something that Paquito and Yanguas remember for a very, very long time. Like one of those big moments in their career. I mean, from Paquito's perspective, he was obviously the older guy, the one who had
Mm.
really had to lead the pair out there and show his experience, which I don't think he did. And then Yanguas obviously probably being a young, very young player already at the top of the rankings, but I think potentially, yeah, he from a mental standpoint, he probably got a little bit too nervous, and he even said it in an interview not long ago. So, hey, fingers crossed that not this year, but next year, if I'm not mistaken, they get a chance to redeem themselves.
Exactly. But we did come on today to talk about paddle, but not necessarily relive the World Cup. We've already done that episode, so maybe we should be kind of moving on. And what we really wanted to talk, what we really wanted to do in coming on here and talking about paddle today is, of course, I would say the kind of paddle roulette in terms of pairs has started. I feel like this year's maybe taken a bit of a while, definitely longer than last season. I mean, we're already kind of in April, and it's the first time that we're kind of talking about pair splits. Obviously, I think this is mainly due to the fact that not much paddle has been played due to the ongoing drama and Balkan and whatnot. So that probably has delayed, I think, some of the kind of pair splits, but it seems like they have finally arrived, and we have the kind of. Are they confirmed these splits, or is it kind of rumor? If I'm not mistaken, they're not really confirmed by players themselves, are they?
No, I mean players haven't announced them on their social media accounts, but
Yeah.
I mean the main kind of paddle journalists, i.e.
Yeah.
Martín Di Nenno, who are normally one of the first, if not the first, to talk about this stuff, have
Relevo as
confirmed it.
well.
Yeah.
They've confirmed it. So, I mean, we will talk about them, and obviously, it's none other than Martín Di Nenno and Javi Garrido are kind of one of the first pairs that will be splitting up. It seems like Di Nenno is the one that made the decision. I think it's fair to say that maybe results haven't gone as they wish, especially in the last tournament. I feel because I mean, we talked about this offline when we first saw the news and the rumors of them splitting up, but obviously the last tournament in Chile, if I'm not mistaken, they lost against Victor Ruiz
Yes. And Chisco Gil. Yeah.
and Chisco Gil. So I think that's obviously quite a underperformance to the level of players that both Garrido and Di Nenno are. If I'm not mistaken as well, they would have, they had a easy draw in a way because their quarterfinal matchup would have been against Koki and Yanguas, which is a match that we really wanted to see how they stacked up against Koki and Yanguas, who have started quite well, I would say. Other than that, they did lose in the other tournaments against Chingalan, if I'm not mistaken, and Lebron and Stupa. So not terrible in that sense, but it is true that you never got the feeling that they performed or they had a bit of a breakthrough or some result that you could think like, okay, this partnership can really do damage in the future and go a long way. So it seems like Martín Di Nenno has pulled the trigger and he's called Juan Tello, which I think is very interesting. And it seems like now Tello and Libaak are splitting. On the flip side, Tae and Libaak seem like they've had I would say, quite a decent start to their 2025 season. I mean, Tae has had a bit of a resurgence, definitely compared to last year. And it seems like Libaak will be the one pairing with Javi Garrido, which I think is quite an interesting partnership. Well, Hugo, I'll kind of leave it up to you to kick us off and give us your thoughts about these splits and kind of the new pairs as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit too early or in my eyes, Di Nenno has been a bit rash when taking that decision because it's been 3 tournaments this season and they've lost to Chingalan, who objectively are better than him and Garrido. The rankings say so. Lebron and Stupa, again, they're ahead of them in the rankings, and Lebron and Stupa have had an unbelievable start to the season. I mean, they've made every single final in every tournament they played. So their only stinker has been 1 3-set match against 2 decent players. I mean, it's not like losing against 2 unranked players or players that are coming from kind of the pre-rounds of the tournament or the qualifying rounds. So I know they haven't had a result to hang on to and say this is really indicating that we're going to go and reach higher highs. But I just think being objective, their partnership is not as good as the 4 pairs above them. And it is true that you could potentially say Goki and Yangwas are relatively even on paper. It's just that they've had the benefit of not playing the other top seeds until the semi-finals. So they've just made the semi-finals in the 3 tournaments they've played, and they've lost against one of the kind of big 3. So
Highlights how important kind of seeding is.
yeah, it really does. Well, obviously the double bye that was introduced at the start of the season obviously helped them as well. But yeah, I just think that taking that into account and who he's gone for, which is a player that's ranked below Garrido, and in recent seasons, I'd say in the last 3 seasons, has performed at a substantially lower level than Garrido. I just think it's a bit rash. I know Deyo's had a great start. I mean, we spoke about his stats in that quarterfinal matchup against Cardenals Burger, who had obviously come off from beating Goyan Tapia, and he had something like 37 winners and 18 unforced errors. I mean, unbelievable. And he's just looked so slick on the court. But I personally don't think that's enough to pull the trigger and say goodbye to Garrido, who objectively I still think is a little bit more reliable than Tello based on Tello's recent years. But maybe, Gons, do you want to share your initial thoughts?
So my initial thoughts are, I think this could be the rare quadruple win where maybe all the players come out better out of this than what they had been before. And I mean, on Deo's case, I think it's quite obvious, right? He's pairing up with Di Nenno, who from a points perspective is going to give him a huge bump. So I think that could be quite good. I think if Di Nenno has kind of gone through this is because he clearly feels like on court or due to their game, there's just something they're lacking. And to be honest, you see it right away. I think you can see partnerships where on paper it might make sense, but then you see them actually playing together. Like, for example, Paquito and Lebron, on paper, it made so much sense. But then when you actually saw them on court, it didn't feel like there was that chemistry and that cohesiveness that there is in other pairs. And even with Di Nenno and Garrido, I did feel like there was that. It wasn't as smooth, let's just say, as it has been with other pairs. Now, Tello has played with Di Nenno before in the Hexagon Cup, so maybe that's why kind of Di Nenno thought Tello could be a good partner
Great
because
results, obviously.
they had great results. They played together, so they know each other's games, and Tello's obviously been playing quite well this season. In my opinion, I definitely think it's definitely a bit too early because I do think as well from Deo's side, he's obviously had a great start of the season, but it's only really been 3 tournaments. I would like to see kind of a bit more and maybe potentially, more tournaments, and let's see how he does throughout maybe this first half of the season to then really give him a chance to be kind of back again in the fold for these top players, because I still feel like I just kind of want to see a bit more consistency from him, because I think we've acknowledged the problems with Tay in the past are more on the mental side. So on the mental side, I feel like you're a bit more unreliable and you're not necessarily as consistent, right? So I kind of want to see him go through a decent amount of tournaments being at this sort of level to really feel like he's back, if you see what I mean.
No,
So it
100%.
is, yeah. So I feel like on the Nana side is a bit early in that sense, but I mean, I still think they could be I mean, on paper again, it kind of makes sense. And then on Libaak's and Garrido's side, I quite like it because obviously Garrido goes with a similar player to Yanguas, I think, like a very offensive forehand player that I think could give him a lot. So it's going to be quite interesting. Obviously, it's a knockdown in the rankings, but I don't know if it's going to affect them that much because, as you said, at the end of the day, they still had to play, they would have to face one of these top four pairs at the quarterfinals in either case. So it's not like they were, when he was with Di Nenno, they were kind of only meeting the top dogs at the semifinals. So that's still going to be the case. So I don't think it's a massive issue. And we'll see from Libaak's perspective. Obviously, it is a bit annoying because they had been doing quite well, and I would have loved to see them again play more together with Tello because it was a super fun partnership to watch. But at the same time, pairing up with Garrido is not the end of the world. I think it's a player that suits Libaak, and they should also be doing quite well. What I will say, and maybe to throw it back to you, which I thought was surprising when we first heard the rumor of Garrido and Di Nenno splitting, I definitely thought that, Di Nenno and Garrido, I definitely thought that the one partner for Di Nenno would have been Paquito. I thought that made a lot of sense to come back, but it doesn't seem like that is the case. I mean, what are your thoughts? Would you have liked to see that partnership as well?
Well, I mean, 100%. I mean, we spoke about that so much offline, and we just think that their game styles match perfectly. They're both like very patient players. This is Di Nenno and Paquito we're talking about. Patient players. You've got a traditional backhand player in Paquito. He's potentially not got the smashing ability that other backhand players do, at least not the power, but he does have an unbelievable smash, and he loves covering that kind of aerial center of the court. And then Di Nenno just being that classic forehand player that works really hard for his partner and gets the best out of his partners. So I think it would have made a lot of sense. And then, I mean, they are proven as a pair. They almost made it to the number one rank. I mean, they were alive in that race against LeBron Galan a few years ago, and it was down to the last tournament. So I think that would have made a lot of sense. I think maybe Di Nenno thinks that Paquito will probably be there for him if this partnership doesn't work out. Whereas, just because Paquito's a bit older and he probably doesn't have that many years left at the peak of the game, so if Di Nenno calls him, he'll probably say, yeah, 100%, I'm going back in. Because I don't think Paquito has that many better options. But from Di Nenno's perspective, if he really believes that Tello's potential is what he's demonstrated so far this season and his ceiling is higher, then I think it makes sense to go Tello first. And if it doesn't work, hey, I'm going to go back to something solid and play it safe. At least that's my opinion. I mean, actually, I haven't done my homework regarding where Garrido and Libaak will sit points-wise, because you said that it might not affect them that much because they're not in the top four pairs. I assume they're in the top eight, because if they're not in the top eight, then that is a bit of a problem. I mean, you can face Chingalan in suddenly like the round of 16, which is still a real problem. But if they're in the top eight, I agree. I don't think it's a big drama. And now what I did look at is that Tello and Di Nenno are going to be ranked sixth, if I'm not mistaken. So Di Nenno loses one spot in favor of, if I'm not mistaken, John Sant and Momo Gonzalez, who go up to the fifth seed. In my eyes, probably undeservedly. I mean, I don't think they've had the best start of the season. So they've obviously, benefited from that. But I agree. I think Garrido Libaak makes a lot of sense. Similar partnership and game structure and play to what he offered with Yanguas, as you very rightly pointed out. I mean, aggressive forehand player, kind of that modern forehand player that can also smash. The Bibora is both Yanguas' and Libaak's, best shot. Great backhand volley from Libaak. So I think it can make And I think it makes sense, and I think it can work out. My main concern with them is the mental side of it. I just think that Garrido suffered with that throughout his career. He has improved it, but it's always been kind of his big kryptonite. And Libaak sometimes suffers from that as well, just because he's still very, very young. And I think he's a bit irrational. Sometimes he goes for too many winners and too many aggressive and high risk shots when perhaps the match asks for something different. So, I mean, if I
Mm.
had to bet, I do think that Tello Di Nenno are a better match and they will do better. I mean, the seeding and the ranking will definitely help them. But I do like both pairs. And it's not that I think Di Nenno is taking a massive step back with
Yeah.
going with Tello. I think they're pretty similar regarding their current level. So, hey, I mean, it's him who's bet on it.
Yeah, I mean, I love it for Teo. I just hope that he is kind of in the right mindset and space and kind of has that motivation to really kind of improve and knock on the top of the rankings. Because if he does, I think Martín Di Nenno is a great partner for him. I just wonder if it's too soon, like I mentioned. I would love to see how kind of he develops throughout a bit more of the season to really feel like, okay, he's actually super motivated and wants to come back and kind of really challenge and compete, which just seems like he does. And when he had on-court interviews and stuff, he said that he's loved kind of being back on the fold of things and competing and everything. So hopefully we get kind of the version that he's been showing us this year, because I mean then that would be a really good partnership. I think on Garrido as well, something that's actually quite interesting is, and I think kind of alludes to the mental point that you were talking about, and that aspect is that it just feels like when he has the chance with a kind of top player that he doesn't really grasp it. It feels like he's kind of performing a bit better with players that are or viewed kind of lesser ranked than the top. And I'm speaking about mainly when he had his partnership with Chingoto, or even with Di Nenno back in the day. And with Di Nenno now, it seems like he's underperformed. Now, I think Yanguas is a bit different because when they did start, they started the season together. And I don't think Yanguas at the start of last year was regarded as a perennial, top two or top three kind of forehand player, and kind of, I think this year was the year that he had that breakthrough. So I wouldn't maybe categorize him there, but with Bergamini he had great performances, Garrido, and it just seems like he hasn't, when he gets that chance to be with a top player, he hasn't really taken that extra step to meet those demands. And I think that's kind of maybe to do with this kind of mental side that we see sometimes in his game that he lacks. But I mean, he's got all the talent. He's still quite relatively young, even though he looks quite old, which is quite funny. And I'm sure that he's going to continue to develop. And Libaak is a good partner for him to do so and kind of go back to that level that he's been showing us that he can reach. So yeah, exciting pairs I think as well.
I do feel for Garrido a little bit though, because I do think he's been a bit unlucky. I mean,
Well,
thinking about
when he split from Yanguas, I mean that was
that
tough.
was a stinker. He literally said that had made him suffer a lot, and he suffered a lot from a mental standpoint. I mean, they were arguably the third best pair, being honest.
Yeah,
I mean, after Goyan Tapia and Chingalan, and
yeah,
Yanguas decided to take the risk and go with Stupa. Did it pay off for him? I guess in a way, yes, because they did win tournaments and beat Chingalan a few times. But at the same time, that partnership ended, and Stupa said goodbye to him to bring Juan Lebron on board as a partner. So 50-50. And then I remember when Garrido was playing with Chingoto. Was it with Chingoto? And then
yeah.
not long after, Chingoto was called by Galan. Was that it?
No, that was when Momo was playing with Chingoto.
Sorry, that was it. Yeah.
Yeah, Garrido's with
So
Yanguas.
I just think he's been hard done in a way. And I think he still has something to say in terms of whether he's going to be able to match up against the top backhand players in the world. Because when I think about it, who do I think is more likely to, well, compete better against Tapia, Stupa, and Galan? Tello or Garrido? Personally, I think we've already seen the peak of Tello. I'm not saying he can't compete with them, but
Yeah,
I think he's a level below. I probably think Garrido is a level below too, but I just still think he has a bit to go to get to his peak. So I think potentially Garrido's potential has
yeah.
a higher ceiling than
I
Tello's.
would agree with that. I would
It's
agree with
just
that. I don't think we've seen the best of Garrido, and we potentially have seen the best of Tello.
yeah, yeah. But hey, who knows? I mean, maybe what Di Nenno wants is someone who's a bit kind of safe in a way that just grinds out those results, keeps them in the quarterfinals week in, week out. And if they can cause an upset against a big pair, maybe he feels more confident next to Tello. I mean, obviously, Tello and Libaak have beaten Paquito and Berga twice this season, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Arguably, I would say that Libaak and Tello are better than Berga and Paquito. So it's not a huge surprise, just that the rankings say that they're ranked lower. And obviously, they took Lebron and Stuba to a third set. So credit where credit's due. And that third set was very much affected by Libaak's injury and his kind of lower performance. Yeah. I mean, it's probably one of these debates that I think is so easy to see both sides. So I'm
Mm.
very 50-50. I get Di Nenno, but in a way, I also think it's a bit irrational. I understand him trusting Tello, but at the same time, I don't. There's just so many different kind of ways to look at it.
No, 100%. And but yeah, I mean, I think they'll be fun to watch either way. And maybe moving on to the last topic, and we just kind of want to give a quick update with the whole Premier Padel drama situation, which I think it potentially is showing signs that it could potentially be over, I guess, because we are seeing kind of the Brussels P2, which we spoke about, kind of entry list, and registrations are still open, and we have a number of pairs in the top 100 that have already kind of joined the tournament, the entry list. I mean, Lebron and Stupa, no shock there, given that they had already joined in Cancun. But others, as for example, Koki and Yanguas, Garcia and Barahona. Even I've seen Jairo and Fran Guerrero as well. So it just seems like, and there's a lot more players in the top 100 that have joined. So it just seems like maybe there's something they're speaking and the players have kind of, I guess, taken action and maybe they're happy. Or maybe it's just the fact that due to legal reasons, they don't want to make this super hard because there are a number of P2s that they can miss, but they can't miss every single one of them, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe it's also just for a legal matter not to get themselves in actual real trouble. They are kind of having to play this one, or they're choosing to play this one. But in any case, it's good to see that at least the Brussels P2 will be, in full force with all the pairs out there. And I just wanted to say something, Hugo, as well. I'm not sure if you know this. Maybe I think you probably won't, but I was quite happy when I saw this name in the entry list. But it's none other than Daniel Windel.
No,
He is in the entry list for Belgium, and he's also in the entry list for the major in Qatar. So
epic.
very excited. We obviously had Daniel Windel a couple of weeks ago or a month ago, and I think the best episode that we've had so far. Was absolutely amazing to speak with him. He obviously had trouble. Well, he's been dealing with depression and he had to stop playing at the end of last year. And he had an amazing season last year. So the fact that he's back, I think, we're just so happy for him. And if he is watching or listening, we fully support you, Daniel. We hope that you go through the qualies and make the main draw, but we'll be watching and supporting nonetheless. And it's great to see you back on court.
Totally agree and reiterate your words, Gons. And to be honest, I'm just happy that he's playing. I don't really mind whether he makes a big run. I mean, obviously, I'm a massive fan of his, so I'd love him to go as deep as possible. But I'm just happy that he's
Yes.
entered.
No,
He's
of
clearly
course.
in a good moment and in a good headspace. And that's just great to see because he deserves it. I mean, honestly, he's one of the nicest, most genuine people I've met. Just so open, so willing to help. So it was great to interview him. I mean, if any of our listeners haven't checked our episode out with him, as Gon
Mm.
said, I think we released it a few weeks ago. So do check it out because it was well for us incredibly interesting. So many different things that we found out whilst we were recording. It's not that he told us everything in the episode before. We found out a lot of those things whilst we were talking to him. So it was, I mean, yeah, great, a great experience. And no, I talking about your point on the Brussels P2, I agree. I hope this is the beginning of the end.
Mm.
I hope it's the beginning of the end because they've come to some sort of agreement and players are happy and they believe that their conditions are fair. Because I don't just want them to come back because of the
Right.
legal side of the issue, which is my worry to an extent. I mean, I think there
Mm.
was an interview released this week or the week before with Juan Cruz Beluati, and he said that Premier Padel have got like really tough. So I don't know whether he's referring to, well, just from an organizational perspective and the pressure they're applying at the moment for players to play if they don't want to suffer from legal consequences. So yeah, fingers crossed that's the reason. But yeah, I mean, as a fan, obviously great. Most of the top players and pairs seem to be registering for it. I hope that Dabia is in a better position and at least mostly recovered from his injury. Gons, you and I were talking about it about an hour ago. It seems like it's some ligament damage to one of his fingers in his hand. So obviously a bit of a worry when it's the hand that you use to grab the racket. There's a few images and videos of him training at the moment over in Argentina, back at home. So hopefully that's helped him kind of recover. And maybe one final point that I found quite strange is the fact that we now go into a major, then we have a P2 in the middle, and then you move on to a P1 and there's a break. It just feels like it's all a bit chaotic. I don't really understand the structure. We spoke about this before at the start of the season. I mean, why would you have a 2-week break, go into a major, then a very low category tournament, then a P1, and then another break? Surely you'd kind of build it up towards the major. But hey, I mean, I
I
don't know.
think I totally agree. I mean, if you see the tennis tournament, the calendar, right? You have at the beginning of the clay court season, you have like lower tournaments which end up, the last tournament is obviously Roland Garros, right? For the main players. And then it goes into the cross season, and the last tournament of the cross season will be Wimbledon, which I think makes a lot more sense, and it make a lot more sense. But obviously still lots of issues and organizational problems with Premier Padel, and given that the sport is so young and you have to deal with promoters and the fact that probably paddle's still not, I would say, from promoter perspective, is still probably not profitable, right? I mean, we actually heard Bella quite recently say the fact that they lost money in Miami. I mean, I think that's also a bit of a special case because in Miami you don't have the audiences that you would have in Spain, for example, where you could attract maybe 5 to 10,000 people in a stadium. In Miami, I think he said they had 2,000 people. So obviously it's hard to make a tournament profitable if you only have 2,000 people watching the tournament on the stands. But let's see. I mean, hopefully, paddle evolves. Players get, obviously more people get interested and drawn into the tournaments, the pro tour, and then we start getting this more organized tour as well, and more prize money and everything, fair conditions, as we've always spoken about. But yeah, I mean, I think this probably brings us to the end of the episode, Hugo. I mean,
I
as
do have an
always,
extra little point gone to
go
you
for it.
because I was just thinking about our predictions at the start of the season, and obviously one of the
Yeah.
questions was which out of the top pairs is going to be the first one to split. So we're already both wrong, right? Because I don't think
Yeah.
we said.
No, definitely wasn't. I definitely don't think I said got it.
No, I mean, I remember I said, I think I stuck with Paquito Berga, but I'd mentioned them, who I think were my final decision. I also mentioned I was worried Cardona, so that's definitely not a good shout. But yeah, not Di Nenno Garrido.
Yeah, no, I definitely didn't. I can't remember which ones I said. Did I say like Chingalan? I
You
can't.
might have gone Chingalan.
I might have gone Chingalan. So yeah, I mean that's obviously not going to happen.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, in any case, it's been a pleasure as always, and I hope everyone's enjoyed this episode. Leave us your thoughts as well of the new partnerships, and if you like them, and we'll catch you next time.
Cheers, guys.